Hello, everyone. My name is Elie Mouawad, and I am working on a white paper for brain cancer funding research. I am going into my third year at the University of Windsor in biomed, and I'm here to show you a quick snapshot of what the project is looking like and what kind of information I included in it in order to get more funding for brain cancer research. Okay, so first of all, I'd like to start with just mentioning the impact of research on society, regardless of the kind of research. I would like to say that research has had a positive impact on our society and has had a high value in saving lives over the years. Some main researches that we can talk about and discoveries include penicillin and discovery of antibiotics in 1928, gel electrophoresis, DNA polymerase, PCR, and gene therapy. So I'd like to share a quick quote with you guys that I kind of like throughout my time working on the paper kind of helped me set a standard for myself and why I was so excited to just do all this research. If you improve the quality of the lives of millions of people, that's a big impact. On the other hand, if you save the lives of a relatively small number of people, that's also a very significant impact. So there's no shame in saving lives, even if it's a small amount of people, because every life matters. So that was kind of my motto going through this, trying to trying to work on providing more brain cancer research funding just to help save as many lives as possible. So the impact of funding on research. Funding has had a positive impact on research and its quality. Funding's positive impact does not only include physical material, but other research-related activities such as traveling for seminars. Sometimes people think of research funding as just buying machines or just physical material, but it's not just that. There's so much more that goes into research, such as like attending seminars and just getting yourself familiarized with the topic, and that also requires a great amount of funding. Part of research includes understanding the concept being studied and gathering as much information as possible around it. And acquiring information from other sources requires a lot of time and money as well. So, history of cancer discoveries. I'll go over this really quickly. There has been cancer discoveries from 1775 all the way leading up to 2020, beginning with the first discoveries of inflammation due to cancer inheritance, the first X-ray, all the way leading up to the latest discovery in 2020, with changes throughout the genome play in cancer development, growth, and spread. So the trend that I noticed is that from 1775, which is when the first discovery was made, leading up to 1902, which is 127 years of time. Seven cancer-related discoveries were made, and from 2001 leading up to 2020, which is only in 19 years, there was 24 cancer-related discoveries. And during that small period of time of 19 years, we can notice that there was so much more funding put into cancer research. Okay, so since I'm gonna be since my white paper talks about brain cancer research, I want to just give a quick introduction of what brain cancer is. Brain cancer is the formation of cancers or malignant brain tumors due to an overgrowth of cells in the brain. Primary brain cancer is cancer that starts in the brain, and metastatic brain cancer is cancer that has spread from another area of the body to the brain, and that is the more common type of cancer. There are 120 types of brain tumors and four different grades and stages of brain cancer. Its diagnosis is done through neurological examinations, imaging such as MRI, CT, PT, scans, lumbar puncture, and some treatments include surgery, chemotherapy, radiation therapy, and clinical trials. Okay, so some statistics that I have discovered. So in 2015, cancer research and investment in Canada was a total of around $480 million. You can kind of see on the right side how it's spread out through the cancers. And brain cancer only received 8.5% total of the total funding of those 480 million, and that's lower than leukemia, prostate, and breast cancer. So I just go to mention that how much percent other types of cancer the cancers receive. and their mortality rate. And while breast cancer, which is a deadly type of cancer, received 22.5% of funding and had a much lower mortality rate. So you can see that it has received a lot more funding than the other ones and had a low mortality rate. And brain cancer, like I said, received 8.5% of the funding and only had a 2.9% mortality rate. So that begs us to ask the question, if we were to receive more funding for brain cancer, which is definitely possible, how low can we bring this mortality rate? And the answer could be very low. And the brain cancer is very rare, which could justify why it has a lower mortality rate, but that doesn't make it any less deadly. And I will go on to show you a couple diagrams that explain why that show different statistics that explain why brain cancer needs more funding. So here are just quick diagrams showing the research investment over the percent incidence. And then you can see through all the types of cancers. And here you can see the percent research investment over the more percent mortality, and you can see it spread out throughout all cancers. What I want to get into here is some funding discrepancies that we need to be aware of. There are many funding discrepancies between cancers, where some cancers were found to be overfunded, while others were found to be underfunded for reasons are unrelated to mortality and incidence, which is a little bit weird, but that's just how it is. Okay, so this shows the relative years of life lost, um, and then the relative research funding in percent, and then you can see where brain cancer is. It's in BR/CNS over here, and you can see it's like one of the higher ones. There are a bunch that are lower ones where years of life are lost, and you can see that the percent funding isn't that high exactly. And then over here, we can see the life expectancy over the age for different types of races. And for this for brain cancer. And then we can see that the older you get, the less years you will have to live. And this is a trend that is shown for both males and females. And then over here, it also shows different types of races, and then it compares it to different types of cancer. And then it shows the age of death and frequency. And then what I want to get into, which I believe is the most important diagram here, this one shows the years of life loss, and then per races, but then also per cancer. And then you can see that varying from cancer types at the bottom, and then from the mean of years lost, you can see that brain, malignant, CNS, and brain and other CNS non-malignant are clearly the clear-cut highest years of life lost for both males and females, we could say. And that tells us that even though the mortality rate isn't necessarily the highest, which I did mention that it could be because it's not a very common, the most common cancer type. Well, what kind of lives are the people living who have brain cancer? And this shows us that they're not living the best lives, because there's so much there's so much statistical years of life lost that even though they might be alive, they aren't really living the best, like in their best state possible. Um, so here talks about some diagnosis and funding from the Terry Fox Research Institute. 3,000 people are diagnosed with brain cancer every year with a low survival rate. In 2019, 2020, 8.5%, which is $1.8 million, was given to brain cancer research. This number would not be considered enough, given that it has to be distributed over many institutions, research projects that can get costly. So when you look maybe at the number $1 million, you think that, oh, that's a lot of money. But you have to think about how many research institutions there are, or how many projects are being made, and how much does each one of those cost. And then when you divide it up, that does not end up being necessarily high amount of money or enough amount of money. And there also doesn't seem to be a trend saying that there's going to be an increase, too much increased brain cancer research. And we can see that from over the years, there wasn't any main significant spike in brain cancer research funding. And another stat would be that a cancer that we can all agree that is funded very well would be breast cancer. And successful breast cancer funding brought mortality rate down by 44% and survival rate up by 88% throughout the years of its funding. And that just shows that when this much money is being put in and this many great minds are working on finding a fix to a certain disease or cancer in this case, great things can happen. So here I want to talk about something that is a little bit different, and it's COVID-19 funding. So I know that every single person on this planet has been affected one way or another by COVID-19, and it has been getting better, and it's a lot due to the vaccines, which were developed pretty quickly. So the U.S. government threw over $5 billion for COVID-19 research alone. That's just for research. And the Canadian government invested 192 million Canadian dollars for COVID-19 research, and about 600 million Canadian dollars into vaccine research and clinical trials. Global spending on the COVID-19 research exceeded was way over 5 billion US dollars. There wasn't a specific number, but it was way over that. And thousands of scientists around the world were primarily focused on developing a vaccine and understanding COVID. And because of that, because of this many minds and this much funding being put into COVID-19, a vaccine was developed in under 2 years. So COVID-19 and cancer are two completely different things, and we all understand that. However, the goal is to show that when this much money and this much attention is given for a certain health risk, and the greatest minds in the world are working on a fix without limitations of funding and waiting for approvals, great things can definitely happen. And why was so much money and attention directed towards COVID-19? Because it is a global pandemic, right? But what we don't understand is important that cancer is important to understand that cancer has been a global issue for longer that we can remember. And even though it has existed for a really long time, that does not mean that we should forget about it, or give it any less attention. So COVID was kind of the new thing. It had people worried, they had them panicking, and that's why perhaps so much money and research was put into it, right? But then you look at cancer and how long it's been impacting our society and how many lives were lost because of it. Just because it's been around for such a long time doesn't mean that we should act like it's normal for this many people to lose their lives to cancer. So we need to understand that lives are at stake, and it's important to work with a certain type of urge for the sake of humanity. And COVID funding and breast cancer funding both showed positive trends. So the more funding, the more success research has, and it was an obvious trend. So it is time to follow the trend and act to provide more funding for brain cancer research, which I am aiming on accomplishing. And thank you very much for listening to this presentation. And if you have any sorts of questions or any interest, or just would like to have a quick chat about this whole any sort of topic that about this presentation or this research that I'm doing, please feel free to contact our group by email or by any way you feel comfortable, and we'd be happy to getting back to you. Thank you.